Hi, so this is Ronaldo Delgado here. So, my face doesn't show it. I've got a big smile on my face. I've got a calm tone, but I'm actually quite perturbed. I recently just watched a United States Senator, a Democrat, grill someone from Homeland Security about Trump's immigration policy. By the way, I'm not defending him here. What bothered me, though, frankly perturbed me, was the extreme ignorance to which this senator came to the table. It was apparent to me that he was not fundamentally aware of, he was not aware of the most fundamental things about our immigration law. Now, I'm an attorney, but I'm not an immigration attorney. And the purpose of this video is to actually educate the public about some of the basics regarding immigration so that when there is a discussion, they could be, whatever side they may be on, they may make more intelligent and coherent points. First of all, as a person that's a progressive, some people call us liberals, some people call us things more pejorative, but we like to use the word undocumented immigrant. It's a gentle terminology, but it also has the disadvantage of confusing people, making people believe that undocumented immigrants are not here illegally, or that their presence is not illegal or is not criminal. I want to explain first, I'm going to start off with the very first thing, the concept of illegal entry and unlawful presence. But let me talk about first a legal way to come to the country. A legal way is you get a visa, which can be hard to get. Sometimes it's easy to get, depending upon what country you're from. But you get a visa and you can come into the country. Maybe you have a tourist visa. Maybe you have a student visa. Maybe you have a visa, a work visa. There's sundry types of visas out there, and the purpose of this film is not to go into detail about what they all are, but there's many different types of visas. And visas have end dates, and you could overstay your stay. That is called unlawful presence. The reason it is called unlawful presence is you're not legally in the country. However, when you entered the country, you did so legally. So it is just unlawful presence. The Supreme Court has said, the United States Supreme Court has said, that unlawful presence in and of itself is not criminal activity. Unlawful absence in and of itself is not unlawful activity. Now, what happens is many people hear that, especially on the left, and want to go, oh, so there's really nothing criminal about being a so-called illegal immigrant. Certainly illegal. It's certainly against the immigration laws, but it is not criminal to be unlawfully present. But that does not mean all people illegally in the country are not also criminals in terms of the immigration laws. I'm not talking about people that went out and did other crimes. If you come to the country, you are supposed to go to a port of entry, whether it's a road from Mexico to the United States, maybe a train from Mexico to the United States, or an airport, an international airport, or a ship. If you're coming into the United States, there are at the ports of entry people from immigration and customs that will basically make sure that the immigration laws are being followed and the customs laws are being followed. So, if you circumvent that by going across the Rio Grande, or crossing the Canadian border illegally, or somehow smuggling yourself in on a ship, that is a crime. Now, if you have been removed once, if you've been thrown out of the country once, but the process today is called removal, it is also a crime. It's a worse crime. Now, the first time, if you've never been removed and they simply catch you, and there's a process called removal. If they remove you from the United States and you illegally entered, that is a misdemeanor crime. Under federal law, a misdemeanor is defined as a crime punishable by exactly 1 year or less than a year. Because it is a crime with a 6-month sentence and no more, it is by definition a misdemeanor, but it is nonetheless a crime. Now, there are many people, fellow progressives, who unfortunately further confuse this, not so much by, well, they kind of tell half-truths. They say, well, it's only a misdemeanor. It's actually only a misdemeanor in some cases. If you have been removed already from the United States and you come back in, you could be punished by, up to 2 years. So that by definition, by federal definition, is a felony. So again, to recapitulate, illegal entry is a crime. The first time, it's a misdemeanor. The second and third times, it's a felony. So when people say that it's not criminal to be an illegal immigrant, yeah, they're kind of telling a half-truth. And yes, there's even so-called fact-checking websites that are highly misleading, calling that statement mostly true. It's not mostly true. It's mostly misleading. The truth is illegal entry is criminal. Unlawful presence is not. You just got to know that. And now, the other thing that keeps happening is people don't seem to understand asylum, political asylum. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but I do want to outline some of the basics. First of all, once you're in the United States for up to a year, you could claim political asylum. Now, it's important to note, very important to note, please get this right. Asylum doesn't mean you entered the country lawfully. Now, what you're supposed to do is, if you don't have a visa, and let's say you believe you're entitled to political asylum, you're supposed to actually go to the port of entry and say, hi, I am Mr. So-and-so or Ms. So-and-so, and I'd like to claim political asylum. Which, by the way, it used to take a long time to process it. Now they're giving preference to people, which is actually a dubious distinction, to people that are coming, the most recent arrivals, as I misspeak, are going to get preference only because they don't want people to come here, claim asylum, get a work permit, and then basically take years to go through the asylum process. So it's actually for the detriment of the person seeking asylum, but you do get a quick application. Now, what is important to remember is that you need to apply within a year. There are exceptions, exceptional circumstances, which I'll talk about in a minute. But one criterion is not that you are here lawfully, or that you did not break the nation's laws entering the country. So it is very possible, let's say you're from a war-torn, you're actually a legitimate asylum applicant, and you cross the Rio Grande, and then you're in the United States. Even though you have illegally entered the country, even though you have committed a misdemeanor crime, you are entitled to apply for asylum within the first year. Why is this important? Because a lot of people out there, I could see this on Facebook, are saying, well, some of these people are applying for asylum. Yeah, okay, some are, some aren't. There are people who have illegally entered the country who are seeking asylum, and there are people who lawfully enter the country and are seeking asylum. You could do it as within a year. So, if you don't have a visa, what you're supposed to do is go to the port of entry and say to immigration, "Hi, I want to apply for asylum." Another thing that could happen, and it happens all the time, is maybe you get a student visa, a tourist visa, a work visa, or whatever. There are, again, multiple types of visas. And when you're here, you go, "Hi, I am also a, I am entitled to political asylum." So that is how that could happen. The other way it could happen, as I mentioned, you could cross illegally the Rio Grande or the Canadian border, or be what they call a stowaway in a boat, not go through a port of entry, escape detection, and within a year, go, "I want asylum." The point of all this is the fact that somebody has applied for asylum doesn't in any way indicate that his presence or her presence was lawful or that the entry was lawful. People can apply for asylum with unlawful presence. They've applied for asylum with lawful presence. They've applied for asylum with illegal entry. And they've applied for asylum with lawful entry. So it's entirely possible that you committed a crime and are guilty of illegally entering the country, but I believe, and I hope I'm not wrong, you could still request political asylum. In order to get political asylum, you have to apply, as I said, within 1 year, unless there are exceptional circumstances. Now, I think it's a non-exhaustive list. Again, I'm not an expert. Talk to an immigration attorney. But the typical examples are health. You were in a coma. You were in extreme health, had extreme health problems. There are some things with incompetent attorneys or improper prior applications, or there's a change in circumstance back home. The classic example is, I suppose you're Jewish and you're here in the United States. So I'm not implying that was the law back then, and then, they're not treating the Jews so well back home in Germany. But that would be the classic example that, it's entirely possible that a place that was once safe is no longer safe. Now, what is political asylum? They have to have a reasonable fear. Again, it has to be not just a fear, it has to be a reasonable fear of future persecution. In other words, it can't just be stuff that happened to you. It's got to be, and it's likely to happen again if I go back. On account of means because of. It can't just be, you're afraid of prosecution or something. It has to be because, bad things will happen to you. It has to be bad things will happen to you because of this. Race, maybe bad things will happen to you because of your race. Persecution because of race. Future persecution because of religion. Future persecution because of national origin, political opinion, or membership in a social group. That's race, religion, national origin, political opinion, which is the traditional one, or membership in a social group. Now, if you notice, the idea of this is not to provide the entire world an opportunity to come in the United States because things aren't going back home. So an economic refugee does not qualify for asylum. Being in a war-torn country does not qualify you for asylum unless you can show that perhaps because of the fighting of regimes, one group, but by the way, it doesn't have to be the legitimate controlling government, but you will be attacked because of your religion. So if you're like, "Oh shit, they're having a war, this sucks," no, you're not entitled to asylum. But if you're a Christian and Muslim militias are attacking your people, yeah, you would be. And likewise, just to reverse the situation, if you're a Muslim and you're being attacked by a Christian militia, just so it's even-handed here, that too would be entitle you to political asylum. But it can't just be there's poor, or there's pestilence, or there's famine, or it's crime-ridden. I don't. And again, if you really have a problem, talk to an immigration attorney and try to get the minutiae. I know there's problems in El Salvador, for instance, or Guatemala because of crime. Again, you still have to fit into one of these categories, and arguably, maybe these people are arguing why it's a membership in a social group, and if you have to look at the case details. The thing about me is, when I don't know the particulars, I shut up. Which is not what this U.S. Senator did. It was obvious he didn't know what he was talking about. I gave away his gender, and he kept talking anyhow. Mandatory bars, conviction of an aggravated felony, support of any terrorist group, assisted in the persecution of others. Those people can't claim asylum, political asylum. Discretionary bars, a non-citizen had an opportunity to live permanently in a third country before entering the United States. So they were in Canada, they came here, but their persecution is somewhere in the Middle East. It's discretionary. The non-citizen is applying for asylum more than a year after entering the United States, unless they had a valid immigration status. Again, that's tricky. Talk to an immigration lawyer. The non-citizen previously had asylum application denied by an immigration court. That's another discretionary bar. So, there are nuanced areas here, but for God's sake, please, geez, know the basics. Know the difference between illegal entry and unlawful presence. Know what you need to be, know that those who seek political asylum sometimes have criminally entered the country, sometimes they haven't. Just because someone has sought asylum doesn't mean they illegally enter the country. And then you have to go on, well, what are we going to do as a nation with, I'm not even trying to advocate a position here. I'm just saying you need to think about it. You need to be intellectually honest. What are we going to do with people? By the way, another thing. Apparently some people do not know that it is extremely dangerous to enter the United States through Mexico. Usually they cross the Rio Grande, they go through a desert, and there's all types of articles on the internet about people who have died trying to cross into the United States. So when people say, this is child abuse, don't act stupid. Read about these articles and see why they're saying that, because it is apparently a very perilous trip. On the other hand, obviously in certain circumstances, the dangers of where they're coming from may far exceed the dangers of going through the desert, so it may be a rational choice. But don't say dumb things and act like there's no danger. That's just pure ignorance. Read about it. So again, to summarize, it's illegal to enter the United States. You can have illegal entry. It's always illegal to not go through a port of entry. It might even be illegal for a U.S. citizen, but it's certainly illegal for a non-U.S. citizen. Unlawful presence is not a crime, but illegal entry is. Know the difference. Know what you're talking about. Asylum does not mean you're lawfully here. Asylum, you can apply for it within a year. After that, it takes exceptional circumstances. You could be illegally here and apply for asylum. That means, I believe, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, that you may be unlawfully present and apply for asylum. I believe, I may be wrong. I know you could apply for unlawful presence. I believe you can even apply for political asylum if you unlawfully entered the country. To unlawfully enter the country without going through a port of entry. The first time is a crime. It's a misdemeanor, meaning that it is punished by less than a year. You can get punished up to 6 months. If you've already been removed once and they remove you a second time, and If you already have been removed once and you illegally enter a second time, you can the imprisonment may be up to 2 years, and that is defined. It's a felony by definition, because you can be in prison more than 1 year. So that's the basics. Noam, it's apparent to me that one senator did not. Well, you could tell by the nature of the. Some people ask rhetorical questions where they know the answer and they're just trying to, you know, be educational. This senator was not in that category. This senator did not know what the heck he was talking about, and it was pretty disgraceful. At any rate, signing off. Take care.